First off, all players cheat at some point or another. It's just the degree of the cheating. I'd say it depends. If they're fudging an occasional die roll, who cares? It really doesn't make a difference. If the player feels that they have to fudge the die roll, they're so vested in their character, they have to fudge a die roll here and there. Great, they're vested in their character. As long as it's not altering the game experience, it's not causing problems for somebody else. If it gets to the point where it's disrupting the game, then I'd talk to the player. I mean, I've had this happen, both as the game master and with players in my group. I've seen, where I was a player and seen other players cheating. Talk to them first. If, say, hey, I know this is going on. They'll either admit it or deny it. Barring that you can't, that they won't do it, that doesn't change anything. Return the favor. Do the same thing. A character that never gets hit or always makes a save, you can always hit them, and you can put them in situations where they'll always fail a save. They're always hitting the bad guy. Well, the bad guy's always hitting them. It can be turned on them. And if it's really starting to be detrimental to the game, if it gets horrible, if it's starting to affect the other players, then ask the person to quit. You're done. Out. I mean, I've never been afraid of telling a player to take a walk.
I think that's definitely a valid statement. If you get to the point where something is continuously happening over and over and over again, I think obviously the repercussion for such things has to be a little bit greater. And if it steps up to the point where they're actually affecting the dynamic of your entire group, then obviously, yeah, that person needs to step down or move on, for sure. Oh, the cheating issue. This is the one honestly difficult thing about running the game is, you're in charge. You are the master. It's your responsibility to discipline your players who are out of line and make sure that there's some type of balance within all these players. And the more age groups you get, the more diversity you get, the harder that becomes. You have to worry about feelings, about personal biases and beliefs, and how do you balance all that in a fantasy realm. And one of the things for me in regards to cheating is, before my players actually join my game, we do a lot of house rules. So I make sure to establish that kind of barrier on where things are going to be allowed and where things are not going to be allowed. So if I see my players just start to push that barrier, I have to give them a little bit of a reminder. And I'm not the kind of guy to smite you in game or just mysteriously fireball you or throw 10 monsters in your face. It may just be with a couple little sly comments under the table, but you just have to get your point across. And knowing most of my gamers on a personal level makes it a little bit easier. You kind of have that circle of trust going on where if one person breaks that trust, not only do I kind of feel it, everyone at the table is going to feel it. So it's definitely frowned upon to begin with, and having that, aura of discouragement on something like that helps. But if you see it, if you catch it, I'm the kind of DM who will call you out. And even some of my players are there too now. If someone calls out a 19 and someone's like, oh, that was a 7, it's call for concern.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. He still says talk to him. That's what you should do. But I don't know if the relationship part bars into it, but that's just, I guess, a point of... It's a matter of, it's going to be based on the person, because I have no problem. I don't care if you're my brother or my best friend or somebody I just met. If you're being disruptive, I'm going to tell you you're being disruptive. Now, keeping that in mind, I've had a player being so disruptive that I have done it at the table with the group and just told them to simply get them out of my game. And he promptly did. Interestingly, I still talk to that person now after, 15 years later. I'm still talking to him. But I've done that. I mean, it happens. That was an extreme case. I don't necessarily recommend doing that all the time. But yeah, just talk to them. I mean, it's usually, maybe there's a reason behind it. maybe the player feels, that and this will go into something. This is going to kind of fall into something that I know you're going to ask coming up, but maybe the player feels that the character is not fitting the concept, and that's why they're cheating. They try to make sure it fits the concept. But then again, half the time, if you're playing these games, you're playing them the way they're meant to be played. Half the fun is failing. Some of the best moments in games have been when characters have had something negative happen to them. Some of our most memorable moments. We mentioned Glenn earlier. He had a character that got bit by a giant lizard and trapped in its mouth, and the lizard went running off down the cave mouth. And when it got to Glenn's turn, what are you doing? And his answer was screaming like a bitch. I mean, he was answering honestly, but it was funny. And everybody that was in that game, if you, that night, if you asked them, they remember that. We had another character that character that had a sword that was made for fighting goblins, and he literally was just devastating this group. And then he had one round where he had a horrible set of rolls, and in that same round, when the goblins reprised, they had a terrific set of rolls, and the character died, was killed by it. I mean, but it was so poetically fitting because he's just slashing through these groups, like Sauron at the beginning of Lord of the Rings, and then all of a sudden he misses, and when he misses, that's when he died, and the player was fine with it. He absolutely thought it was a great epic ending. It fit. So